All right, welcome to the show, David Chapman. I have followed you on Twitter or on X, I guess, for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
and then I watched you on the debate between you and Red Eagle Politics, which was a very interesting discussion. So, welcome to the show, and just let our audience know who you are, what you've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years, thereabouts.
So for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been tweeting. I've written a book. It's called Forgotten Nine: Those Who Belong in the Hall of Fame. It's a little baseball, so if you're into baseball, go check it out on Amazon. It's okay if you're not into it. It's whatever.
Well, hey, you know
Um,
Nate Silver. Nate Silver is a huge baseball guy, and he's always talking about baseball and politics. So,
he's terrible at predicting baseball, though.
is he? I
Um,
don't know what his predictions are like on baseball. I know what they're like on politics, but I don't know what they're like
Um,
on baseball.
so I don't actually know. I just take Richard Barris's word for it that he's been terrible at sports, and then he went to politics and was just as bad at politics.
Right.
Um, so
All right. I interrupted you. Keep going.
yeah, yeah, pretty much the same from what you guys know. I just tweet, and I've actually gotten a lot more popular last 3-4 months. My account is just on fire. So I don't know. It's probably the election. Everyone's tuning in now. So, you know, not much. Just that's what I've been doing. So,
All right. So when I watched that debate, I couldn't, and I went and I revisited it tonight because I knew I was having you on.
right.
And it's amazing to see that actually some of the things you said in that debate actually came to fruition. And it's interesting because this debate was in 2021. This is when there was the discussion about whether or not Ron DeSantis should be the nominee. And I have to admit, at the time, I was, and I'm a big Trump guy. I have been since 2015, since the first day. And it's funny because a lot of people they act now as though they're huge Trump people. When you look back, and they really weren't on board until late in the game. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there are very few originals. But you look back, and there was a time when I was thinking, well, you know what? Maybe DeSantis is the best candidate. This is 2021. He was coming off. Well, he had the big victory in what was it, 22. So you started to think, well, maybe he's the candidate. But you were adamantly opposed to Ron DeSantis. And then when I saw him show up on the debate stage, I thought, wow, I mean, this is not good. So tell us, what did you know about DeSantis's inability that a lot of people did not?
Well, I think I just noticed some details that people weren't willing to acknowledge. People eventually started to acknowledge it later in the game. Things like him being a neocon before he was a Trump guy. People eventually started to acknowledge that when it was more convenient. Another thing that once he let's see, how do we put this? Once he got onto the national stage and people started to see him campaign, like he's a great governor, very effective governor, very effective in front of the press. But when he's campaigning, he just doesn't have the riz. And when people saw that, they were like,
Yeah, that's
whoa, this is
that's
not
what I
the
saw.
guy.
Because I'm here in Florida, and he's done a really good job on paper. You don't really have any complaints about him. You can tell he is sort of an establishment Republican for sure. Um, But there's one thing having a candidate on paper, and there's a whole other thing having the candidate on stage. And when he walked on stage, it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, it was honestly, I couldn't even believe it because he was one of the most annoying and unlikable ones on the whole stage. And he's on stage with Nikki Haley and a whole bunch of neocons, and it was quite shocking.
And
So
I just remember 2018 when he was running for governor. That was exactly the way it was. Like Trump, everybody wanted to forget that Trump pulled him across in 2018. Like he
right.
won barely against Andrew Gillum. Um, a lot of what happened with after Trump lost, a lot of what happened with DeSantis, that he got puffed up a lot. And on paper, like you said, he's perfect. He's perfect. But like we forgot about the Putnam debate that he had with I think it was Andrew Putnam and Ron DeSantis. He was actually very bad in that debate. The
Gillum,
primary
Gillum,
debate.
right? Gillum.
No, it was a primary debate.
Oh, the primary one. Yes.
Yeah, the primary debate. He was really bad in that, and I just remember that, and that's why I was just like, yeah, this guy doesn't have the riz. He's just not. But no one would remember that, and no one even pays attention to primary governor debates. So I mean,
Yeah,
so
you're
no one
right. He
really
does.
listened to me, but whatever.
No aura. No aura. You also said in that debate, and by the way, I really like Red Eagle Politics. I'm a big fan of
I
his.
like it too, and he does really good work now with his polling and stuff.
Yes, and his channel. I mean, he's unbelievable what he's done with his channel. So I'd love to have him on as well. You also said in that debate, I don't want to talk about the debate the whole time. It was like 3 years ago, but you also said that the GOP would struggle in 2022, or I think you said something like you wouldn't be surprised if they struggled
Yeah,
in the
I
midterms.
forgot that I said that in a debate, but I had said that a few other times during the midterms too, because I didn't believe that the Trump voter was going to come out, and they
Right.
didn't. They just they're not attached to the GOP; they're attached to Trump.
Right. Okay, so tell us where you think the 2024 race stands now, and give us your thoughts on RFK Jr.'s endorsement and how much that affects the race, if at all.
So the RFK Jr. race, the endorsement affects the race a lot. Like I was looking at the 4 or 5 way aggregates in these swing states. RFK is at like 5, 6, and almost 7% in Arizona. That's significant. Like some polls are saying Trump will get 40, 50% of the voters. 60% if he endorsed, and he did. Um, that's like 2.5 point added to the vote share. If you look at that, and like Harris maybe gets 20%, but the way the campaign is handling this, they're shoving those voters away. They're calling him an extremist, far right conspiracy theorist, and like if you're a voter of RFK who cares about his issues, do you really take kindly to being called an extremist? Not really. They're also, instead of trying to win those voters, they're running ads to minimize the endorsement. I mean, 20% is a lot less than 50%, but 20% of 5% is still a 1 point vote share improvement. So you would at least be able to keep pace with Trump in those swing states, but they're just shoving them away. And so I think a lot of those Harris leaning RFKers will end up going to like maybe either not vote, or maybe they'll go to Cornell West and like a Michigan. Whereas Trump, like so in Pennsylvania, RFK was causing Trump to lose in Pennsylvania. He was at 5%, and it was that close. The effect in Pennsylvania is that on election night, you don't have to sweat it now. You know that at like 10, 11 o'clock, you're going to have a lead. You're going to be fine. You're not going to sweat it till the end if, you need that last 1,000 votes, or are they going to steal it? No, RFK's out now. He's not going to be on the ballot. You're not going to sweat it in Pennsylvania now. That's the impact of RFK in Pennsylvania. So where the election is now, I just saw Mark Halperin. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's on I think Newsmax a lot. He
As
was
a matter of
just
fact, sorry to interrupt, but Mark
go ahead.
Halpern now has a podcast, and I've been going on the podcast, and he brings me on sometimes because you can kind of call in or whatever. So that's
Cool.
just a side note. Two way is the name of the podcast. I've always liked Mark Halpern. I thought he was one of the fairer mainstream media types. So, but anyway, go on.
Yeah, he just was talking about like he's seen some private data that leads him to believe that Harris might actually be where Biden was when he dropped out. And if you've been listening to Richard Barris, Richard Barris actually commented on this on Twitter that's actually a real possibility. Now, I would say that Trump's probably got a small lead in Pennsylvania. Michigan's tough. I don't know if you heard, but Ann Seltzer, who is a very accurate pollster in Iowa, she has shelved her Trump plus 19 poll in Iowa. So she's not releasing it because it would benefit the Democrats not to release it. Why would that be? Because if you see Trump plus 19 in Iowa, you know that he's winning in Wisconsin. So Yeah, so Trump's probably leading in Wisconsin because he's leading big in Iowa. Down in Georgia, it's probably close, but Trump's probably got on an edge of the margin of error, like +3, +4. It probably expands to +5 on election night. North Carolina, I don't listen to the polls. North Carolina was one of the only states in a midterms to have a red wave, and the voter registration data just says, listen, it's not a +1 Trump, it's like a +4, +5. North Carolina should be safe. Same with Nevada, actually. I think the Democrats have written off Nevada because their voter registration advantage has completely disappeared. It was like almost 100,000 voter edge for Democrats. It's now down to 30,000, and that was Biden's margin of victory in 2020. So they not only do they not have the votes, they don't have the votes to harvest in Nevada. So and all the polls are showing that Trump's leading in Nevada. So I would expect Trump would win Nevada by like 2 points. Arizona's a little weird because even though RFK was polling at 9% and he's off, I actually think that Chase Oliver might start registering a little bit because you got that McCain voter out there, but he's not going to get 9%. I would say he gets like 2, and Trump wins it by 3 or 4, kind of like what he did in 2016. But the polls are going to show it close until then because there's going to be so many undecideds in Arizona because, geez, yeah. I don't know what the McCain machine is thinking out there, but they really think that the Trump is just bad for him. They're just so bad for the country, but they have actually been able to convince Arizona and their voters not to go with Trump. So they did it in 2020. They did it in 2020.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think the question too is there are a lot of voters in Arizona who will not vote for Trump. Okay. Maybe even some moderate Republicans, McCain type Republicans who won't vote for Trump. They voted for Biden because, the old song about Biden is that he's this moderate Democrat and he's a blue dog, as we used to say. We don't even hear that phrase used anymore. But will they vote for a Kamala is the question. I think, people don't remember this, but a lot of voters in 2020, this is before all Biden's age issues and stuff. They just saw Biden as like your very moderate Democrat.
The Obama nostalgia.
That's right. Yeah.
And like a good example of that would be in Pennsylvania, like Scranton Joe. There's parts of Pennsylvania that Biden actually naturally did better than Hillary Clinton in because of the Scranton Joe. Like, was he really from Scranton? I think he was born there, but he lived in Delaware his whole life. But
who cares? That's the narrative, right?
Right, but he was able to convince people, and he does have a natural appeal the way he campaigns, to get people to believe that. Harris doesn't. And if you look at the crosstabs in the polls in Pennsylvania, she's doing 20, 30 points worse in those areas that Biden was able to claw back from Hillary. So she's not doing what Joe did. She's probably losing Pennsylvania. I always said I didn't think the Democrats were dumb enough to get rid of Biden, because even if he was losing, I think that eventually the Democrats would come home and he would be the stronger candidate. Would he lose? Yeah, but he would be the stronger candidate than Harris. I think they were acting out of fear. They were seeing the polls down ballot and they were panicked.
So it's interesting you mentioned about the Ann Seltzer poll and what they have Trump leading by 19 points or something.
That's the rumor, and a lot of people
that might be an indication that in other states he's doing well. I've seen polls, I think 2 in a row, I think, in Virginia.
Yep,
where he's losing by 3 points. I want to get
it's within the margin of error, though.
Well, I think correct me if I'm wrong. I saw that you had Virginia going red. Is that correct?
I have it a toss up.
Okay.
And
I've always been very doubtful about Virginia.
Yeah, I think there's too many government contractors that are gonna vote for Biden or Harris. Yeah. I don't think it's gonna go red, but I think it's gonna be close just because of the economy. But yeah, it's a toss up just because every polling that we've seen is within the margin of error. That's why also, like, Nate Silver said that, she's a favorite at 2%. How is she a favorite at 2%? That would mean that the electorate is 2.5 points more bluer than 2020, which doesn't match up because not only is Virginia within the margin of error, but you have Harris only winning New York by 10 points. That should be 25 points. So it just doesn't line up.
So at this point, you put Virginia as a toss-up. Virginia is like to Republicans what Texas is like to Democrats. Every year they say, "Oh, it's going to go blue," and of course, we had Youngkin win there, and I was
the governor's races are different, though.
Yes, true. Maybe explain to the audience how they're different.
So, Tip O'Neill used to always say, politics are local. So, local residents are more likely to vote a Democrat or a Republican in their local state, but will vote something very different at the national. Like, take Kentucky, for example. They're very willing to elect Andy Beshear, a Democrat in Kentucky, to govern their state, but they'll never elect a Democrat president because they don't want that national stuff. Whereas Beshear's a moderate. He's like a Bill Clinton, right? He's very nice. He makes you feel like he cares about you. But and he's got like local policies that Kentucky cares about. That's very different than having a president, Andy Beshear, right? It's kind of like if you look at the North Carolina polls, Trump +1, and then Robinson is down 10. So politics are local, whereas like senators normally run neck and neck with the president, but the governors, people are voting for their local state. And so that's why in an off-year election, someone will vote a Republican in Virginia. They'll turn around and vote Harris in Virginia in the presidential election year. That's also why Tester is cooked in Montana, because he now has to face re-election with Trump on the ballot. And I say good riddance. That guy is a total fraud.
Every year, it's usually pretty close there with Tester. He's usually in for the fight of his life in that race, right?
Yeah, but he's never had to be on the ballot with Trump on the ballot.
With Trump, correct. So, and I thought about Virginia, and of course, we never want to put an establishment figure on the ticket, but I did consider how much it may have helped Trump to put Youngkin on the ticket. Would you be completely have been opposed to that, or would that have helped him there?
I wouldn't have been opposed to it. I don't think at the time people were thinking, "Oh, let's flip Virginia." I like with Biden on the ticket. They were actually, I think with Biden on the ticket, they were probably thinking that Virginia was going to flip anyway because it was +3 Trump nationally. I don't think that it was necessary for Youngkin. Also, Youngkin, you put him on a ticket if you're desperate for Virginia because the Rust Belt's out of play. That's just not the case. It's kind of like, why did Harris pick Walz? Minnesota, you're going to lose Minnesota. Biden was going to lose it. He was in a lot of trouble. He was going to lose Minnesota. I've heard that there are internal polls where Harris is only leading in Minnesota by 1. Maybe that's why she picked Walz. So,
well, let us remember that in 2016, I remember the words of John King. And yes, I was watching CNN for the results. John King said it's not implausible that Trump wins Minnesota tonight. He ended up losing it, I think, by 1 point. It was very close.
Yeah, it was a little over 1 point. Yeah.
But close. When you think of Minnesota, you don't think of it. So, okay. So one thing I really want to ask you about is there's been a lot of talk in right-wing spheres. I'm not going to name names, but there's been a lot of talk. And by the way, I'm seeing that people are starting to stream in. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to David Chapman's channel. And you're more active on X, though, aren't you, than you are on YouTube?
Yeah. I've been trying to get something going on YouTube. I just never had the time.
What's your handle on X?
David Chapman 141.
David Chapman. Okay. I don't know if you can hear this, but we're getting a real classic Florida storm right now. So I'm just hoping the power does not go out. Okay. Yeah. The question I wanted to ask you, in right-wing spheres, there's been a lot of talk about whether or not Trump is being advised properly. He has Susie Wiles and Chris Lasavita, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Advising this campaign. And I have to say, and I know that you're going to notice this as someone who pays attention closely, this campaign in 2024 is definitely not the campaign he ran in 2016. No. I mean, you look back and it was much more populist. I know he still talks about immigration, but it was about trade and trade deals. And I know he's already done USMCA, but a lot of that helped him in the Rust Belt states. And my question is he being advised properly at the moment?
No, and that's why he brought in Corey Lewandowski.
Yes.
And then Corey Lewandowski's first move was to bring in Bruce Lavelle. So now they have a couple of 2016 guys who are probably washing out those other guys that are not giving him advice. That's why you now see some interesting moves like him going on X to do a space with Elon Musk. That's why he's constantly doing interviews on YouTube with all these big streamers, something he wasn't doing before Lewandowski got there. Another thing that he's done, he's now gotten the endorsement of RFK, something that he's probably wanted to do, but he's probably been advised against. Well, Lewandowski's there now. And saying to Susan and whoever the other guy is to just shut up, you know. You've also seen some leaks in Politico where it kind of sounds like they are complaining that Lewandowski's there. I don't know how much he's affected it, but it does seem like Trump's making a few better moves lately. I mean, maybe you've noticed that too, but he's also brought in Tulsi Gabbard, and Gabbard's going to do a town hall with him in Wisconsin too. That'll be interesting. So, yeah, those two campaign managers are not advising him very well. But Trump has noticed that, and that's why he has. I don't know why he hasn't fired them. I think he's afraid of the optics. But he has brought.
Well, I mean, the optics. Think back, 2016. He was
I know.
firing them. He was going through them by the week.
I know. But yeah, but he has brought in other people to counterbalance. That might be the best we get.
So who was it that Lewandowski brought along that you mentioned? Because I didn't know that name.
Bruce Lavelle. That wasn't very well reported. It just, if you're following Lewandowski's Twitter feed, you would have caught it.
Okay.
So.
No, Lewandowski was the one who got him through the primaries, and then they brought in who was the guy they sent to Manafort.
Manafort to wrangle the delegates, and then he was out, and Bannon ran the general.
I mean, I think that's who he needs. If they can get a direct line to the prison cell, as bad as that sounds, I think maybe that would help him. I don't know. What do you think are Kamala's advantages going into this, if any?
I don't think she has any advantages. That's why she's ripping off all of Trump's policies. No tax on tips, tough on the border. She's now saying she's for the border wall. I saw that. Yeah, that's like the most amazing ripoff I've ever seen.
Send her a hat. Send her a MAGA hat right away.
Actually, I don't know if you saw it, but the New York Post put her on their cover with a MAGA hat on.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's like... This is how you know she's losing, because she's now copying all of her opponents' policies. Because if Trump's policies weren't popular, if Trump's policies weren't winning, she wouldn't have to do this. And it's really embarrassing for her to just, all of my policies are my opponent's policies. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Let's get back to you mentioned Walz earlier. He is a Minnesota Midwestern guy. I wonder if they picked him to try and get that voter, and it doesn't matter. They're not going to know that Walz was in support of riots and what have you. They don't even know the policies. And I keep telling people the average voter isn't so locked in to the intricacies of the policies. They just see a guy there. And I wonder if that is a threat, or do you think we should be worried that he's going to gin up more support? And because to me, it's these states, these Rust Belt states, this is it. Like, this is the whole game here, and specifically Pennsylvania. And you made a great point about, Scranton Joe. There's not going to be the Scranton Joe support that there was in 2020. But I'm wondering, the reason they picked Walz was to mitigate that.
They're running a base campaign, so they're just trying to gin up as much base enthusiasm as they can to prevent the bottom from falling out like it was with Joe. Mm-hmm. They're making no efforts to appeal to the middle. They've seceded all of that. That's what Walz is. Not to mention the fact that there were rumors that she asked a few other people and they told her no because they didn't want to go down in flames. They didn't think she could win. Most
Right.
people in Democrat circles don't think she could win. I mean, we're not counting like the social media influencers who are completely delusional and believe every
Right.
Quinnipiac poll that drops. Yeah, either Walz is there maybe to win Minnesota, but really to gin up base enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Should we be worried? I'm not worried. Walz is a dumb idiot. It's like when he comes out on stage just clapping and cheering, I mean, like, it's not dad energy. It's just like idiot energy.
I
It's
think
like,
this is why they started attacking Trump and Vance with the weird label, because they were getting a head start on it. They knew that the weird label
mhm.
was going to be applied to them. Okay, let's talk about Vance. I've been following Vance for a long time, since his Hillbilly Elegy book came out. And I don't know, man. Like, I'm looking at Vance out there, and he looks very awkward. Like, I don't know if you saw the and look, I think he's a good candidate. I think he's a great Senate candidate. He's America first in a lot of ways, although it's taken him a long time to get there. We remember in 2016 he was on TV saying Trump's a racist, blah blah blah. I don't know if you saw him at the donut shop the other day, but he walks in there and it's just a very awkward exchange. And my thinking is, I've watched Trump for a long time, and I can read him pretty well now. I think Trump wishes that RFK Jr. was his running mate. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I reading that incorrectly?
I mean, possibly, but I don't think it was ever possible. I don't think RFK was ever going to do that.
No, I know
On
he wouldn't do
JD
it, but it
Vance,
seems like Trump is having second thoughts about Vance being on the ticket.
on JD Vance is too real to fake a donut shop drive by. Like with the like Harris Waltz where they went into that
The Doritos.
gas station. Yeah, the Doritos. Like they're 100% fake. They can pull that off because they're just all scripted. Even though like it's fake, but that's just what they do. But
Right.
Vance, he's just too real to like fake the donut drive by, and that's why he looks awkward, because he just like, this is not me. I'm not comfortable doing it.
Right. Right. So you'd give Trump a good chance going in right now. Like, if the election were held today, you think
Yeah, he wins.
he's in a
Yeah,
good
he wins.
position?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your advice for him going into the debates? I want to know this because I'm thinking about this, and it's the same old thing. There's a woman on the other side. If he goes too hard against her, it's going to seem like he's too aggressive. What is the strategy? If you remember, and I always go back to 2016 because what a campaign that was, so nostalgic. In the first debate, I think he went pretty hard at Hillary. In the second one, he did, because remember, he was on his heels because of the Billy Bush tape. But then if you go back and look at the third one, it seems like someone told him, like, just be calm, be normal. And because we know, personally, I would rather him be him.
Right.
I would rather him be Trump. It's entertaining. It's great. But then I'm thinking about these voters who are, we don't like his tone. So what if you're advising him, if Wiles and LaCivita and Lewandowski resign and now you're the campaign manager, what are you telling him going into this? Are you telling him just be yourself, or what?
Yeah, I'd say be yourself with one caveat: don't interrupt her, because they're gonna bait him, because she wants a I'm talking moment.
Yes.
And so don't give her that. However, if you do give her that and she says I'm talking, then you need to respond with
for the first time.
No, you're lying.
Okay.
So
now wait,
Hillary Clinton her. Your version of you'd be in jail.
You'll be in jail. Are they muting the mics or not? I'm kind of confused.
They're fighting over it. Trump says he doesn't care.
Do you think it's better for him that the mics are muted?
Probably, but listen, it might be, who knows? Every time you think that something's better for Trump, you're wrong. And I think that's what the Democrats are doing. I think that they might unmute the mics and he might be a total gentleman.
We'll see. I think in that Biden debate, it actually worked to his advantage because
Oh, it
you could,
ended Biden's career.
yeah, you could tell he was chomping at the bit to get in there, and to be himself and be jabbing at him. But then there's people who are saying it would have been better had that debate never even happened because then Biden would have stayed in the race. But you might be contrary on that because you were telling me earlier you think that Biden would have done better in places like Pennsylvania than people think.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand why the Democrats got rid of him, except for the fact that they were panicking because they were looking at numbers and they were
Right.
afraid that they were going to lose their seats and House districts and Senate seats. And that's why I think they pulled the trigger and they forced him out. But yeah, I think Biden would have done better because eventually Democrats would have come home.
Right.
Because they're not voting for Trump.
Exactly. It wouldn't have been we're voting for Biden. It would have been we're not voting for Trump. So what you mentioned Rich Barris. Is that the pollster who you really trust? There's all these polls out there, and I will warn people because I remember in 2020, I can't remember which one it was, if it was like a CBS poll or something. I'll never forget it. 2020, they had Trump down I think it was 14 or 16 points in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin ended up being what was it, 1 point or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's all these crazy polls, and I saw the thing you're talking about with Mark Halperin saying that Democrats have internal polling showing her not just losing swing states, but losing the popular vote, which I tell people Trump basically needs to get what, like 48% to win. Like anything under 48, he's having trouble in the electoral college, correct?
Well, he could do it at 46. It just depends on turnout.
If they get 48.
He's done it at 40. 48's a guaranteed win.
Yeah.
46 he could do it because he's done it. He did it once and he almost did it a second time. But 46 is problematic because there's a chance that your other guy could be winning the popular vote by a lot. Whereas 48, there's not much room for the other people to go. There's going to be a lot of third-party voting this time. Even with Kennedy out, you still have Oliver, West, and Stein. And that's going to affect a lot in the Rust Belt. The other thing I would say is with the polls, even after the convention, she's up only 1, 2, tied, Trump +1. If we remember 2016, Hillary Clinton was up 15 points in these polls, right? And so she's running away, and Hillary Clinton only won the popular vote by 2. She lost. And like Biden was up by 15 points in these polls, and he barely won the Electoral College. And you're telling me that Harris is the favorite when she's only leading by 1 or 2 in these polls? These polls are going to be off. They're always off. Like Quinnipiac, Monmouth, CBS, the New York Times, for God's sake, is terrible. All these polls they always overestimate Democrats and underestimate Republicans. You think that they've magically fixed their methodology? No, they've got all the same methodology. And so if she's not at +10 at some point, anytime, if she's not at +15, she's probably losing and losing bad.
So
right now, that's the case.
Yeah, and I mean, if you see a poll that has her leading by 2, I always see Trump when I see him at 45 or 46, 47. I always tack on 2 points personally.
Yep,
because he's notoriously underpolled. It's always around 2 or 3 points. So
yep, it's about the average is 2.7.
Right. You were talking about Trump being advised to go on and do different interviews. He did the Musk one. I just saw, like literally before we came on, that he is scheduled to do an interview with Lex Friedman, who is maybe one of the biggest podcasters out there. How does that help? I saw him on Theo Vaughn, and of course it gets millions and millions of views. But I start to wonder, like how many. You think about who's voting. It's a lot of boomers, even Democrat boomers. And I wonder, you do an interview on Lex Friedman, let's say it gets 10 million, 15 million views, and we think that's a huge outreach. And it is, but I wonder to what extent that is permeating to the average voter who's not, watching all these podcasts and all that.
It's reaching the Gen Z voter, which is low turnout. They're low propensity voters that may or may not turn out. They're more favorable to Trump. Trump's not going to win that category, but he's going to do better than he did among the millennials the last 2 cycles. And so that's what he's doing. He's trying to run up that vote total. Like the Theo Vaughn podcast, that ended up being #1 for last week.
Right.
And the other one, I can't remember what the other one was that he was on, but that was #4. They both the Theo Vaughn one beat both Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
So I mean they're definitely getting a lot of views. Trump's on it, everybody's watching it.
Right. Now I don't know if this is the same. Where are you? Are you in Illinois?
Yeah,
I don't know if it's the same up there, but down here, and I swear to you, I'm not exaggerating. I have not spoken to one male 30 or under who is not for Trump. That is a huge group, and it was not the case 4 years ago, 8 years ago, where you had that many young people in support of Trump. So the key is to get them out to vote. I don't know what their ground operations like. I don't know what the Trump campaigns, how they're doing in that sense. But if you can get, and they might need to focus. I think we're going to see a huge gender gap this time around, especially if abortion seems to be the issue. And you're watching the Democrat convention, and they're talking about IVF now. It seems to be all about that. I don't remember Trump saying anything about that.
That is an appeal to the older single ladies who are everything to the Harris campaign.
Right.
On the Illinois here, just like you said that you haven't met a Harris voter. It's funny. I live right next to Iowa. I don't know if you ever heard of the Quad Cities.
Yes.
But that right from my window I can see Davenport. Davenport is famous during the Iowa caucuses. Now, the funny thing is, in my area, I haven't met I've met one Harris voter, and he's not sure he's going to vote for Harris. He just might stay home.
Wow.
But other than that, everybody else is voting for Trump that I know.
Okay, you're so close to Iowa. Maybe you can answer this question. I was looking the other day just because I'm a political nerd, and I'm looking at the change between Iowa from cycle to cycle, and I'm looking back at Obama in Iowa, and Obama won Iowa pretty handily.
Yeah.
And then in 2016, there's just this huge shift. Now, I kind of know the answer. I think I know the answer, but explain how a state has such a radical shift from Obama, a candidate who many think is so progressive, and then Trump, a candidate many think is so right wing. But maybe the truth is Trump isn't so different. Am I reading it incorrectly?
So what happened was the white working class shifted mainly on economic issues and issues of war, trade especially. You're right. Iowa was the most profound of any state. Ohio shifted hard too, but Iowa has been the most profound, the most pivot counties from Obama to Trump of any state in the union. I think it was like 27 pivot counties. It's absolutely insane. And I don't think he's let any of them go. I think Biden may have won one of them, but it was like
this is mostly rural counties, I'm guessing.
That's really all Iowa is. Like they have Cedar Rapids is like one of their bigger cities. It's 100,000 people, and in Des Moines is their capital. That's like 250,000. Like that's the biggest it gets in Iowa. Everything else is like small suburban type cities, and then the rest is rural. So it's like a massive dictator numbers for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the white working class that shifted. You remember Obama had a very big white working class following, especially in 2008. He nearly flipped Missouri. He won Indiana, and he won North Carolina, and he nearly won Montana.
And, the white working class is what won him Michigan and Pennsylvania and everywhere up there. So how do you get the white working class back? Usually you're talking about trade, you're talking about immigration. Mm-hmm. But on trade, I don't know how much he can talk about on trade. One, because he already kind of tried to deal with it. by getting rid of NAFTA, and he put the USMCA there. But another thing is, and I was talking to one of my more liberal friends yesterday or day before, and he said to me, well, Biden's manufacturing numbers have been great, and manufacturing is coming back. So Trump really can't say anything about that because Biden did as good a job or better than Trump when it comes to the manufacturing. So what issue do you go after the white working class with when trade sounds kind of like, in 2016, trade was a new thing to talk about. You'd never hear Republicans rail against NAFTA. You'd never hear Democrats rail against NAFTA, at least in the way Trump did.
So the issues are different now. It's very economic driven: taxes, inflation, cost of living, cost of insurance, cost of housing. Trade really isn't a factor because people aren't worried about it. People are still worried about immigration because it's a direct tie to jobs. But other than that, in terms of 2016 issues, it's all economy. It's cost of living, taxes, inflation, especially. That's why trade really isn't a factor here, and that's why we don't really need to go after manufacturing jobs as an issue right now. However, they're wrong on manufacturing. That revision that we saw where they revised it down by 1 million jobs, like 200,000 of those were lost to manufacturing jobs. It's all a lie by the Biden administration. They have not brought back manufacturing. It has been gutted. But again, that's not an issue in this campaign. It should be, but it's not.
What about forever wars? I remember that was a big, and you brought that up earlier. I think that's a white working class issue. They were never for any of that. And now you're looking at Ukraine, billions of dollars funneling there. Obviously, there's not a kinetic war there right now. But I'm wondering if maybe if he can frame it in another way where he can say, look, this money should be best spent here at home on our own people, like he used to say.
Yeah, so Ukraine is a big deal. The Israel war is a bigger, more hot button issue because not only do the Republicans care about it for a reason, but the Democrats are contestedly opposed it because there are people in Michigan and Minnesota who might not even vote because of what the Biden administration has done. But yeah, you've got war, and the working class has always been against pointless wars because the working class is always the first to die in wars. So so they're opposed to that. That is an issue because we do have multiple wars going on, and that's something that Trump should be talking about. That's actually one of the issues that Trump and Kennedy align with too, is the ending of wars, then it's the censorship, then it's health freedom and food freedom. Those are the 4 core issues that they have aligned with on. That's why the Trump voter and the Kennedy voter come together so easy because outside of food freedom, the other 3 are so natural to the Trump base. I've never really heard any Republican talk about food freedom, but I understand it. It's keeping the chemicals out. I remember that being talked about in high school. That was like 10 years ago, but but yeah, I get it. But yeah, they're so easily aligned now. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump gets 60-70% of those voters, and then Harris, she's pushing them away. I wouldn't be surprised she only gets like 10% of those voters, and then the rest of them go to Cornell or they don't vote.
Right. Is there a big enough Muslim population in Dearborn and wherever those counties are in Michigan that if they don't come out, it's a game changer? Because I remember Michigan being extremely close. We're talking like 10,000 votes. I think in 16 it took them like a week to call Michigan. So I'm thinking if they don't come out to vote at all, they don't have to come out for Trump. I'm not expecting that. But if they don't come out at all, are there enough? I mean, it's been talked about, but
it depends on how close Michigan is. Yeah, listen, the last 2 elections, it's been pretty close, especially in 16. There's more of a possibility that these people are going to vote for Stein and West, and you'll be able to see the results, and they'll split off. I know the Democrats are very worried about West. West on a stream recently said that the Democrats offered him a few $1 million to drop out and endorse Harris, and he told them no. So
and he's back on the ballot in Michigan. I saw that. I think this morning.
Yep, he's back on the ballot, which is terrifying them because I think he's got more of a genuine appeal than Stein does. Stein's kind of old news. She'll get about 1%, but I think the Democrats are right. Cornel West is more of a threat to them in Michigan. We got to remember that uncommitted movement started in Michigan, and it was the biggest effort in Michigan of all the primary states. It was like 114,000 uncommitted votes in Michigan. So there is a lot of Muslim anti-Israel votes in Michigan. The second one would be Minnesota. And that's only like 50,000 uncommitted votes. And that's not all of the votes, but that's a good idea of where they're at. But 100,000 can tip an election.
Minnesota, is that Ilhan Omar's area?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, people say, oh, Stein, 1%. Well, 1% is 1%. I mean, 1% is the whole election.
Yeah.
Was Stein not on the ballot in 2020?
She was not. I don't know who ran for the Green. I don't even think the Green Party was on the ballot in the Rust Belt. I can't remember. There was very few third-party voters, the candidates in 2020. Except for Libertarian, Jo Jorgensen was on, and she was terrible. She got like 1% nationally. She was a really.
And if anything, she's taking from Trump, I would think, right?
She would have, yeah, she would have. So. The funny thing is, like, Chase Oliver is probably worse than her in terms of appeal to Libertarian. He actually might. So, in a lot of states, when it comes to 2028. They're gonna, like, when he gets ballot access. I mean, the Libertarians get ballot access. They're gonna be looking at, like, okay, so did you hit a certain threshold for support in 2024? There's a good chance that in a lot of these states, the Libertarians aren't going to hit that, and so they're not going to be on a lot of ballots in 2028, which is good for Republicans, but it might just wipe out the Libertarian Party for the next couple of cycles.
All right, that's about it. Thank you for joining David Chapman. If you haven't already, please subscribe to his YouTube and please follow him on X, David Chapman. Please subscribe to my YouTube. Follow me on X, Florida Millennial, FLA Millennial. And I'd like to have you back on. Maybe we'll make it like, I don't know, every couple of weeks. We'll see where the race is, if you're willing. And because it seems like every week there's new stuff coming out. So it was a pleasure having you on, David, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Sure. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Let me see. Do I have to release you, or how does it go?
I don't know how it works. Are we not live anymore?
Oh, there we go. No, we're still live. All right. Hope you all enjoyed that. First guest on the channel. Went pretty smoothly, I think. He's I've been following him for a long time. Very, very smart guy. So I hope to have him back on again soon. Once again, if you did not catch it, please follow him on X. I think it's just David Chapman, right? Yes, David Chapman 141 on X. Please follow him. Follow me on X, Florida Millennial. And I think that's about it for tonight. At some point, we will get to having a large enough audience that will have questions and more audience participation. But I'm just getting it going again. So thank you all for joining. I will see you probably tomorrow night. I'll do a stream, and I'll keep sending out the posts on YouTube, and I'll also I tend to do my live stream about 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. That's been the time I've been doing it lately. So thank you to all who have already subscribed. Thank you to all who comment. It's a great help to the channel to have more subscriptions, more comments, more action. If you're on X listening, thank you so much for listening. Follow me, Florida Millennial. I stream every night on X and on YouTube, and I will see you all tomorrow night.